A battle to find work that some say isn't fought fairly, as Jane Wells explains.
And confetti, here they are, the Shakers!
The music is great. The bands are all great. I've never heard a bad band down here in Albuquerque.
What do you think about the music scene here in Albuquerque?
It could be better. It's real good, but it could be a lot better.
What's hot, what's not, and who decides? Top 40 is in, anything else is out.
And who decides? A lot of people say it's up to one man.
He's an agent named Joe Buffalino.
I love it. It's not a job for us. It's a way of life.
Buffalino started his Albuquerque agency 8 years ago.
Albuquerque is like America's Liverpool.
And its version of the Beatles may be this group, Sassy Jones, the biggest band in the state with national acclaim.
We cater to the people. I think as bottom line, we give the people exactly what they want.
And the people want Sassy Jones. So do the clubs. That often means dealing exclusively with Joe Buffalino and employing only his bands. That leaves other bands out in the cold. The Shakers couldn't get much work until Buffalino took them on. They would like to play less top 40, but they really can't.
Screening out a lot of creativity and making it difficult for anybody that's just a little bit different to break into the scene. And that's what's unfair.
Buffalino says he builds bands. He gives them the songs to play off the charts. He often tells them what to wear. The bands always work and make money, and Buffalino usually gets a 15% cut.
If there's something wrong with it, I don't see it.
But some bands say since all of the major clubs in town are so-called Buffalino clubs and mostly play top 40, musicians with something else to offer want to leave.
Frustration is motivation a lot of times. So you gotta use everything you've learned just to try to keep going up.
But is Albuquerque ready for more jazz and original music? Buffalino doesn't think so. He says his bands have to answer to a higher power, the club owners.
They might as well own grocery stores. You know, they know nothing about music. They're not music critics.
A lot of bands aren't crazy about club owners. The feeling's mutual.
They'll always be around, but I think they're going to die out.
It's art versus business. Some want to make music, others want to make money, and occasionally they want to make both. Club owners say they have a tremendous overhead, so they have to bring in the bands they feel will get the customers coming in and buying drinks.
A liquor license these days costs about $100,000, but most of these club owners bought them when they were $300,000. You have to sell a lot of booze to pay off a debt like that.
So what does a club owner look for in a band?
The way they look, how they dress, how they are professional, their music, but to me their music is sometimes second compared to how they look and how they act.
The major club owners usually come to Joe Buffalino, the biggest booking agent in the state. Some bands complain that Buffalino and the club owners lock them into playing only top 40 music, and that those who don't play songs like Beat It don't get much work. Buffalino says top 40 is what people want.
This is a nationwide trend. I mean, it's not something that XYZ club owner says, this is all you can play because that's what my wife likes. No, it's nothing like that. It's not arbitrary.
Musicians know they are hired to help sell booze. But what about the drug scene? Is it a problem among bands here? Sassy Jones is considered one of the cleaner bands, but even they admit the problem is widespread.
There's always a presence of it, and there's always an abundance, and there's always people there handing it to you.
Some musicians say off camera that playing clubs night after night, singing the same songs, makes it tough to stay energetic. They say the drugs sometimes help. But what's in the future? Will bands here ever get the opportunity to play regularly, someplace that doesn't have the pressures of selling drinks and keeping club owners happy?
93 KOB-FM, 10 minutes past 4 o'clock. It's your friend TJ Lambert, and this is The Weekend.
The battle of the bands in New Mexico depends a lot on what goes on in this room.
What the bands play in the clubs is usually decided here by what's popular on the radio.
Since most of the biggest stations here have basically a top 40 format, that's apparently what people want to hear. Few stations do anything different, and only a couple ever play music by local bands.
The radio stations, of course, they're worse than the clubs.
There are a few places where you can hear something other than Top 40, but club owners don't make as much money off it. Musicians think the situation could change.
I think the interest is out there. I think a lot of people are afraid to take a chance as far as perhaps opening a nightclub with an alternative of music.
Bands say there is more variety in Santa Fe.
Up in Santa Fe, where people kind of dance like James Thurber drawings, they do that kind of stuff. They're real accepting.
But there's less work there with only a few clubs, and it doesn't look like anything's going to change soon. In fact, local bands may soon hear the club scene strike a sour chord.
You're going to see less and less live bands. It's going to video.
So some bands are getting ready to leave. The Shakers have been together for over 3 years. The group broke up last week. Band members Nancy Howell and Doug Pearson are going to New York to try and make it there.
Will you ever come back? Oh, I come back here to live, but not to play.
They fear other talent will also leave unless bands here are allowed to make a living and still be creative. Club owners say that will happen only when they feel their customers will pay for it. Jane Wells, Eyewitness News Network.